That's our report for now. Come back and see us at 6.
CBS Evening News is next. Good night.
Good night.
On Christ, the solid rock I stand.
Tammy Faye Bakker singing a hymn today after her husband, TV evangelist Jim Bakker, was found guilty on all 24 counts of fraud and conspiracy. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. After a trial that lasted 5 weeks, after the defendant reportedly hallucinated and saw giant ants in the courthouse, after testimony that told of high living and hijinks, the verdict finally was in today on television preacher Jim Bakker. The verdict was guilty 24 times, all counts. It was the latest chapter in a classic story of decline and fall. Correspondent Bruce Hall, who covered the trial, was in the courtroom for the verdict.
Mr. Bakker, over here, please.
Jim Bakker faces a long prison term to pay for his sin. Judgment Day brought a guilty verdict on all 24 counts of fraud and conspiracy. But the television evangelist refuses to concede guilt.
I went into the courtroom innocent of the charges against me, and I come out today still innocent of the charges against me.
The jurors, all active church members, took just 10 hours to reach their verdict. Judge Robert Potter delivered the decision, saying simply, guilty on all counts. There was no reaction from Bakker. His wife Tammy wiped away the tears. Jurors said they saw Bakker as a man of God who became corrupt, trapped by greed.
I don't care who you're for the church. I'm a Christian, that you just can't defraud people.
On Christ, the solid rock I stand.
Tammy Bakker said she could best describe her feelings in song.
It's not over till it's over.
But prosecutors say it is all over for Bakker.
The message is you can't lie to people, and you can't use television and the mails to lie to people to get them to send you money. And it doesn't matter who you are or how well known you are, you simply cannot do that to the American public.
The devil wants to paralyze you.
Jim Bakker built his PTL vision into a $200 million Christian empire, only to see it crumble because of mismanagement and earthly temptation. While it was the payoff to silence Jessica Hahn about her sexual encounter with Bakker that forced the evangelist from his PTL throne, it was television, the same vehicle that brought fame to Bakker that ultimately proved his undoing.
We have a club called the Lifetime Partnership.
The jury concluded Bakker oversold space in PTL hotels and diverted millions to pay for his own life of luxury.
I would say I feel sad but encouraged in God.
Always remember what he did. There are people out there that have given their last dollar, and they cannot get it back.
And I'm obviously very sorry for the Bakker family and all the thousands who've been hurt, but I pray this will be the end of it.
Judge Robert Potter reluctantly released Bakker, saying he was concerned about his fanatical followers who might help him flee the country. He ordered Bakker to report daily until the 24th, at which time the judge could sentence him to up to 120 years in prison. Dan?
Thanks, Bruce. When Jim Bakker's PTL empire collapsed a couple of years ago, he was not alone. Some, not all, but some other TV evangelists also found themselves on shaky ground, accused of various improprieties. But as correspondent Richard Threlkeld tells us in his report, that did not doom America's electronic church. It is thriving once again.
Every day, tens of millions of Americans faithfully tune in their TV preachers. But their faith has been sorely tried the past couple of years since some of their favorites have started showing up instead on the evening news, accused of one sin or another, or admitting it.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
Sex, money, power. The scandals were a setback for televangelism, but only a temporary setback.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Televangelism is on the road to recovery with a whole new crop of video clergy. At least a dozen TV preachers around the country have picked up some of the audience that deserted the bigger names who fell from grace. And some of the old familiar names aren't doing so badly either. Pat Robertson's presidential campaign never got off the ground, but his 700 Club is now boasting its best rating ever. Jerry Falwell folded his moral majority, but his TV ministry netted a record $135 million last year. Even Oral Roberts, who had to close his hospital because it was too expensive, is still grossing $2 million a month. How come so many of the true believers who were so let down by a few of the TV preachers are still giving so generously to others?
If a person is jilted by one person in their love life, doesn't mean they do away with the love. They just find a place where their love is secure.
The people keep giving because it's not for us to judge the ministers. God will judge the ministers.
It's our business to stand up to hell.
But what if the TV ministers insist they're just doing God's will and forget they're only human?
The ministers get into a position where they are accustomed to saying, God told me to do this. They are not accustomed to being challenged. They are not accountable to anyone. And almost any of us are likely to fall under that sort of situation.
So the televangelist associations are trying to enforce some reforms to keep their ministers from succumbing to the temptations of life in the fast lane. It's a matter of survival.
If they do not solve the problem of self-regulation, then we're going to see government regulation, and we're going to see increasing disillusionment among viewers.
Which could happen if any more TV preachers get carried away by that business about God helping those who help themselves. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, New York.
2 days after a military coup attempt against him, Panama's General Manuel Noriega was cracking down today against his civilian political opponents as well as his enemies within the Panamanian Defense Forces. Sporadic shooting was still going on this evening in the capital city, Panama City, apparently an effort by Noriega's men to intimidate people and keep any crowds from gathering. Our veteran foreign correspondent Doug Tennell is on the scene in Panama.
Hours after the leaders of Panama's political opposition emerged from hiding, plainclothes policemen surrounded opposition offices in Panama City. They blocked the entrances to the building, arrested at least one person, and refused to let former presidential candidate Guillermo Endara leave.
This is to intimidate not only me, but the whole population.
Sources reported raids on the homes and offices of other opposition figures around the country this afternoon. While the raids were underway, Manuel Noriega was in the town of Santiago for yet another public appearance that seemed designed to repair any damage to his image of invincibility. Noriega told his supporters that in the wake of the coup attempt, his regime will not tolerate dissent. There are many here who believe he is now weaker than ever.
There is no stability in this country because, first of all, there is no stability within the armed forces of Panama.
Amid the uncertainty, the Bush administration has been criticized by Panama's opposition for choosing to wait on the sidelines. And the U.S. military is beginning to draw fire from people here who are normally friendly.
They won't come. It's like a dog that barks very loudly and bites none at all.
A growing investigation by Noriega loyalists has revealed far greater support for the coup than initially suspected. Even members of the Panama Defense Force High Command have been arrested. Near Noriega's bunker at the headquarters of the Pentagon's Southern Command, U.S. troops remain on their highest state of alert. The greatest fear is that the legacy of this week's failed coup will be more violence as Noriega moves to silence those who dare to oppose him. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Panama.
In Washington, Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney was playing defense for a second day against charges that President Bush and his administration waffled, flubbed, and missed an opportunity to help topple and perhaps capture Noriega. Our chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer has that story. Robert?
Dan, the criticism from the Republican right, which began to simmer yesterday, boiled over on the Senate floor today. At one point, conservative Republican Jesse Helms said that the administration's explanation of what happened in Panama was simply untrue.
As Helms told it, rebel officers took Noriega captive and tried to turn him over to U.S. military officers, only to be told the officers had no clearance to accept him.
U.S. officers informed the opposition troops that the SOUTHCOM did not have the authority to apprehend Noriega, and that the opposition troops would have to bring Noriega to the U.S. base.
Defense Secretary Cheney called the charge hogwash. He contends the rebels never offered to surrender Noriega.
They made it clear to us at that time that they would not turn Noriega over to us, that they did not want him extradited or expelled from the country, that they planned to have him retire quietly in Panama.
While Democrats were not as critical as Helms and others on the right, there was skepticism, and from the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, the promise of an investigation.
Full facts have not yet been laid out to us or to the American people, and we intend to get to the bottom of it.
The intelligence has not been adequate, the strategy has not been adequate, the contingency plans have not been in place.
Well, there's disagreement over just what transpired between the U.S. officers on the scene and the rebel officers while Noriega was being held prisoner. Both Republican Helms and Democrat Kerry said on the Senate floor their sources report that the coup leader has been shot to death by Noriega himself. Dan?
Bob, can President Bush and his men stop all this question asking, or is there likely to be an investigation of the charges made by Senator Helms and others?
I think there's going to be more than one investigation. Senator Boren is planning to have the Intelligence Committee look into this. Senator Nunn, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, says there are a lot of questions still to be answered. So I think this is going to be around for a while.
Thanks, Bob. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, Leslie Stahl on surgery tomorrow on a presidential digit, and David Dow on a little rocket that thought it could.
You're on your way.
Come on, everybody, let's go. I hate science.
Look at that.
Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman.
Dow has committed major funding for this traveling exhibition at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. If we can help turn these kids on to science today, we can help turn out world-class scientists tomorrow.
Wow, let's do great things.
It's no laughing matter. Motor oil on your carpet, or food stains, or pet stains. Time for Woolite Spot and Stain Carpet Cleaner. New with exceptional cleaning power on so many tough stains. Woolite, it's serious cleaning.
This is new Best Foods cholesterol free.
Will I like it?
It has 0% cholesterol.
But will I like
It tastes 100% Best Foods.
I like it.
I knew he'd like it.
I know I'd like it.
New Best Foods cholesterol free with half the fat. Bring out the best.
7,600 more East Germans reached the West today, perhaps the last in the current wave of refugees fleeing through Czechoslovakia. They arrived in West Germany after an eerie last train ride from Prague through East Germany along a corridor sealed off by police to prevent any more refugees from getting on board. There was an especially nightmarish scene reported in Dresden. Thousands of people desperate to get out of East Germany converged on the railroad station in Dresden, which was blocked off by a huge force of police. Still, the crowd surged at the train, screaming, "We want out." At midnight, the police finally drove them back with water cannon and clubs, and only then could the trains creep through, their doors and windows locked from the outside. At dawn, they began arriving at West German refugee camps. Bert Quint reports.
850 East Germans aboard the lead train from Prague were welcomed today as long-lost brothers and sisters. But they were tears of sorrow, too, because they know East Germany has closed the escape route, and it will be harder for those left behind to follow.
The door is closed. The door is closed. To here come not other people from the GDR. We are the last peoples from the GDR.
But Ulf Krug is determined to make it in the West.
I'm a music maker.
And he had his first audition right here.
Realize, smoke it in your eyes.
A little. Thank you.
It's all over now. We made it, this girl says. But she and the others won't forget the sight of their countrymen lining the train's route through East German territory, shouting, "We want to go too." Mikhail Gorbachev will be in East Berlin tomorrow, but the refugees don't think he can help.
I would say he has enough problems with his own country. I think the Germans have to fight for their rights and for their freedom.
For now, at least, some good news for those left behind. This boy calls home and says, "I'm out, Mom." The refugees haven't brought much, just what they could carry. Ulf Krug, the singer, brought a clock, a farewell gift from his father. He's starting a new life, learning a new song, the West German national anthem. Bert Quint, CBS News, Ahrweiler, West Germany.
With all travel now restricted out of East Germany, today's may have been the last convoy, at least for a while. By a conservative count, 1,000 East Germans have fled via Poland, 14,000 through Czechoslovakia, and 25,000 through Hungary since the Hungarian government first opened the floodgates last month.
Contact first made news in 1961. In 1976, the news was too Sudafed. Today, there's new Co-Advil. Co-Advil has what no other cold product has, the pain reliever in Advil plus a proven decongestant, a combination never available before in just one tablet. Co-Advil is so effective it can relieve nasal congestion, sinus pressure, and the aches and pains of your cold, all without drowsiness. Read label before using. New Co-Advil, advanced formula for cold and sinus relief.
This sweet young thing just told my husband he's a very attractive, older man. I'm his age, so what does that make me?
Oil of Olay.
An older woman? Ooh, never.
So similar to the fluid in young skin, penetrating quickly, adding softness and fullness.
I don't intend to grow old gracefully.
Oil of Olay.
Age looks so much better on a man.
Original and now sensitive.
You know, looking like you never get any older is not all it's cracked up to be. You don't get the respect you deserve for the amount of time you put in the business. You can't grow a decent mustache, and you have a tough time getting the 30% seniors discount at Quality, Comfort, or Clarion. Could drive a guy to drink.
Seniors save 30% by calling 800-221-2222. That's 800-221-2222.
President Bush will have surgery on his right hand tomorrow at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. White House officials said plans call for Mr. Bush to remain conscious all during the operation. Our chief White House correspondent, Leslie Stahl, reports on the president's health.
President Bush will have an operation tomorrow to remove a cyst from the middle finger of his right hand. His doctors say it appears to be non-malignant, though a biopsy will be performed. The president himself laughed it off.
No. Life goes on. I'll continue through this awesome burden to continue what I'm doing.
The small lump called a mucoid cyst is at the end of the president's finger between the last knuckle and the nail. He's had it for 3 years, and it's grown to the point that it's become a nuisance.
This is a small, pea-sized swelling that occurs on the back of the fingers, just behind the fingernail, and becomes troublesome if it is not treated in its early stages.
The president is left-handed, so this is not expected to impede his activities. In a photo op, Mr. Bush tried to resist the urgings of reporters to, quote, show us where it hurts.
Don't tempt me. Come on. It is this finger. This middle one. This finger is sometimes identified with a bad gesture. In the United States, I don't know if the same is true all through Africa.
There was a lot of joking here today, Dan, but the president is going to have surgery tomorrow that'll take about an hour. He will get a local anesthetic, so he will not be asleep at all, and that means that the baton will not be passed temporarily to Vice President Quayle. Dan?
Leslie Stahl, thanks. The U.S. House of Representatives today approved and sent to the Senate a catch-all spending bill that, among other things, would do this: cut capital gains taxes for the wealthy, provide a big increase in federal help for child care, including requirements for health and safety standards, and repeal the overall catastrophic illness insurance program, which stood to benefit most the poor and middle-income people. In the United States Senate, last-minute moves today to try to salvage at least a scaled-down version of catastrophic illness insurance. Prospects for success considered iffy. Also, the Senate approved its own version of legislation today, making desecration of the U.S. flag a crime, punishable by up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine.
Freedent's the one. If you've got dental work, you've got 3 great reasons to chew Freedent. You know, Freedent won't stick to your dental work, and Freedent keeps your breath fresh. But maybe you didn't know Freedent moistens your mouth, too. So if you hate a dry mouth like I do, chew Freedent.
Freedent's the one that's the stink out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth, and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Come on, Tyler. Hurry up, boy. Come on, Tyler.
When it's cold and rough outside,
Come on, Tyler.
try something warm and creamy inside. Cream of wheat hot cereal or instant mix and eat. Their smooth texture always lets the taste come through.
Again?
2 warm ways to come in from the cold.
A new Lincoln Town Car for the 1990s has arrived. Dramatically different. A powerful V8 and more room than any other luxury car.
Your Lincoln Town Car, sir.
Lincoln, now more than ever, what a luxury car should be.
The 1989 Nobel Peace Prize was awarded today to the Dalai Lama, the exiled Tibetan Buddhist leader who has led a long, non-violent struggle to free his country from rule by communist Chinese leaders. The Nobel Committee indicated the choice was also meant to deliver a message of support to the pro-freedom and democracy movement inside China. The Dalai Lama was in the United States today. As the award was announced, Jerry Bowen covered his reaction.
Tibet's spiritual and political leader in exile, the Dalai Lama, was awarded the Peace Prize for his nonviolent efforts to free his homeland from nearly 40 years of Chinese control.
When I heard, you see, the news, I myself, not much feeling.
In Southern California, where he's attending a world conference on science and religion, his reaction was typically modest. But the Dalai Lama again expressed concern China is trying to eliminate the Tibetan people, concern his followers may resort to violence.
If Tibetan take arms, follow violent method, that's almost like a suicidal.
The 14th Dalai Lama was a young boy when Buddhist monks chose him as their next god king. In 1950, the same year he assumed leadership of the remote Himalayan kingdom, Tibet was occupied by Chinese troops. 9 years later, the Dalai Lama and 100,000 followers fled to India to establish their government in exile, leaving behind his 1,000-room palace and a country occupied by 300,000 Chinese troops, troops which have used violent force in recent years to quell uprisings.
The Dalai Lama, in his struggle for the liberation of Tibet, consistently has opposed the use of violence.
The chairman of the Nobel Committee said today's award could be seen as encouragement for pro-democracy students in China. Others say the people of Tibet are the big winners.
The award is really the greatest gift to the Tibetan people in 40 years of occupation and repression.
Not surprisingly, China has protested the award, but the Dalai Lama says he remains optimistic about the future of his former kingdom. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
In Florida today, the state Supreme Court struck down a Florida law requiring young women under 18 to get approval from a parent or a judge for an abortion. The court ruled the law violated the United States Constitution's privacy rights. Today's decision comes just 5 days before the Florida legislature considers new abortion restrictions, this in the wake of last July's U.S. Supreme Court ruling, making it easier for states to restrict abortions. 18 AIDS research programs in 14 American cities were awarded federal funds today. The $9 million they will share is aimed at making AIDS drug testing more available for women, minorities, and intravenous drug users.
There's a motor oil that talks about quality. Always has, always will. Well, Valvoline makes the highest quality motor oil recommended by any automobile manufacturer. Oh yeah, unlike the competition, Valvoline also makes the motor oil used by 7 out of 10 Indy 500 crew chiefs. That's 7 out of 10 Indy crew chiefs over the last 10 years. People who know, use Valvoline.
Because of high cholesterol, 1 out of 4 adults is gambling with heart disease. 1 out of 4. You can leave it to chance, or you can do something about it.
Diets low in cholesterol and saturated fats can actually help reduce your cholesterol and odds of heart disease. Fleischmann's margarine has 0 cholesterol, low saturated fat. Fleischmann's margarine, because your heart is in your hands.
Sometimes minor mouth pain can be major trouble. Maximum Strength Anbesol gives maximum strength relief on contact. So before you can say Tchaikovsky, the pain's gone. Maximum Strength Anbesol. It's major relief.
What's that?
Common Sense Oat Bran.
Common sense should tell you it takes these 4 boxes to equal the vitamin and mineral nutrition in just 1 box of total. That's more nutrition than any other cereal.
Now that makes a whole lot of sense.
In California today, the scheduled launch of the first privately developed U.S. commercial rocket. Correspondent David Dow reports what happened when the countdown went to 0.
T-minus 90 minutes, mark and counting.
The countdown at Vandenberg Air Force Base was a first for an unlikely competitor in America's newest space race. On the pad and in mission control rode the future of the American Rocket Company, AMROC, an aerospace midget competing in a giant's game for a piece of the commercial launch business.
The bottom line is that we think we can do it cheaper and better because we have a better idea.
Part of the idea is a new engine design, and part is the dream of the company's late president, George Koopman, of a fleet of inexpensive rockets that would one day become the Federal Express of commercial spaceflight.
We're not running fighter planes. We're not running Indy 500 race cars. We're running pickup trucks and delivery vans.
Koopman was killed in an auto accident a few weeks before his dream reached the launch pad. He boasted that his rocket was the first ever developed entirely with private funds. $15 million so far, pocket change in the aerospace world. When capital dried up, some employees worked for 3 weeks without pay. The dream captured the young and venturesome.
Go ahead.
Today, 25-year-old Julie Mueller counted down to the launch of what was now called the Koopman Express, the proud product of 5 years on a shoestring.
2, 1, 0.
But the Express never lifted off for its intended suborbital flight. A stuck valve apparently starved it of power.
Hang fire. Go to hang fire procedure.
Koopman's family and friends watched in shock as flames engulfed the rocket, a setback to strain even the philosophical.
Nothing good or great was ever accomplished easily or without setbacks.
You know, this happens, and you don't let this stop you. You go on.
The company insists a new rocket will rise from the ashes, that this was a dream delayed, not destroyed. David Dow, CBS News, Vandenberg Air Force Base.
And that's part of our world tonight. We hope you and your family will stay tuned for 48 hours. Tonight the program is about loneliness in America. That's this evening at 8/7 Central Time on this station. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. See you here again soon on 48 Hours.
An epidemic of isolation.
It hurts to be lonely.
Alone in America. What will the next 48 hours be like? Tonight. This is CBS.